Live. Hey all, welcome to last week in exports. Jagat Ji, another crazy week in exports. My God, like I find the export news more entertaining than Bollywood news. J- Jagat Ji, tell me what is going on. Why do we have such a incredible period of export news going on before we get into the show?
So Nikhil, whenever any foreign company or foreign delegation comes to India, I tell them that do you know ABC of India? So they get confused. Then I say ABC is Almighty Bollywood and cricket,
अभी
right?
ये ऐड कर दो सर आप ये अभी एक्सपोर्ट्स भी
Suno,
ऐड कर
suno.
दो आप
Exactly. So I say if you can understand these three, then you will understand India. And now onwards, I'm going to add E, right?
डीई डी में डायरेक्ट एक्सपोर्ट या ऐसा कुछ बना के डाल दो
So you are right.
So,
I mean, it has become more exciting than ABC.
absolutely. So let's get started, sir. The first news: India and South African Customs Union have been working on a pact, and it looks like it's gonna get finalized. Can you tell us what's going on here?
Yeah, Nikhil. So SACU is a very old grouping. It's like SARC or
Okay.
Mercosur or like COMESA, and there are many like that. So it involves like South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Eswatini, and Lesotho. So these five countries are part of it. And uh, just to share with you and everyone here is the entire African continent is 54 countries. Okay. And uh, but and the population is almost equal to India. Okay, so that way, and it's a sunrise market for India. Next 20 years, Africa is going to be very booming for India. And this SACU grouping, almost 30% of the entire African trade is done by them. Particularly South Africa leading it. So that way, it is a very important, country. But also because China of late, last 10 years, has been extremely active in this region, with a lot of infrastructure projects and mining, and also now the TOR, the terms of reference, have been set for the framework and the scope of negotiations for the free trade agreement. So I hope that it within maximum, I think within a year, but maybe even faster now, 6 months, because now India has got a template, right? And the template is is proven in 9 countries, where we have 9 regions where we have signed the free trade agreement. So the thing should move faster. And once it happens, how are the terms? But most probably, India will never agree to something which is not beneficial to India. That is what we are right now doing with US, right? US keeps saying that they are ready, but we keep saying we are not ready, right? Because it is not matching to our expectations.
Right.
So I think this SACU is interesting development.
Absolutely. Let's move on to our next story. Indian exports to FTA partner countries. These are all the free trade agreement countries we've been reporting over the last few weeks and months. Those exports have risen by 25%. Jagatji, incredible news. Your thoughts?
Yes, correct. So this is a very good, bifurcation in which we are able to segregate to show the ROI, the return on investment, which the time and is being devoted, time, energy, money devoted by our government, Ministry of Commerce in particularly, to signing a free trade agreement. So if 25% trade has grown, and it has grown to $43 billion, right, which shows that it is working, right? And overall, if you see overall growth of India's export in the same, quarter one of the financial year 2027, then overall growth is 16%, but the growth in free trade agreement countries is 25%. So that itself gives you the ROI, and the FTA network is paying off. That's the meaning of that. And so exporters need to check whether your product tariff line in active free trade agreements before quoting, because now that element will come into it. And however, again, I repeat, like every time I tell Nikhil, is that hardly 30% of Indian exporters have taken advantage of free trade agreement through documentation because of not knowing what documentation to do, particularly the certificate of origin and value add. So it is important that exporters first understand free trade agreement signing doesn't mean that automatically your duty will be low, right? There is still a documentation to be done.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hope the audience is appreciating shipping container को हम हवा में घुमा रहे हैं जगत जी.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next story, which is something I absolutely love to hear. Indian coffee reached 140 plus countries in the last FY. I mean, I don't know, from growers to roasters. Please start doing value added stuff. Jagat ji, your thoughts. Before that, I have one comment to make, Jagat ji.
Yes, sure.
I feel filter coffee is so underrated. अगर इसको यूएस वगैरह में 20-20 डॉलर में बेचते तो शायद उसको थोड़ा अच्छा वैल्यू मिलता. आई मीन
Correct.
गो अहेड जगत जी.
Yeah, see, the way we have, all this Starbucks and barista, and we should have filter coffee chain,
Yes.
and you are right, absolutely. So, on the coffee front, yeah, you are right. Like we are now touching 140 countries, and there are some countries which are completely first time we have started exporting. Though
My
they are
God.
small countries, but still, there is a lot of tourism happening there. So what happens with tourism, very few people understand this. What happens with tourism is that all the tourists who come, and when they taste that coffee, then they carry it back to their country. And they would continue perhaps if they have liked it. So for example, small countries like Timor Leste, like Micronesia, Djibouti, first time Indian coffee has gone there. And GI registered Arabica unit value, the GI registered, which is like our geographical indication, values have risen to rose 34%, and the Robusta coffee has gone up by 29% export, right? So coffee exporters and the GI tag is lifting, the coffee exports. So register your GI coffee if you have with the coffee board. So that registration is required, and then you will be able to market. See, one of the challenge I think in India is we have a lot of GI, we have a lot of geographical indication approved, but we are not marketing the GI properly. Yeah, it is like you have got a trademark approved, but you are not marketing it, right? So we need to still market the GI properly.
Absolutely. And let's move on to the next story. $110 billion processed food export. That's the gap which is available. This is the opportunity, not the actual export value. Jagat ji, please educate us on this.
Yeah, so at the same time, I must add that we hold less than 2% of the global market size, right? So you can imagine that what is the potential. And it has but India has nearly 14% of the world's arable land, right? But our share is less than 2% in global trade, and the gap is in infrastructure, in the supply chain, in the regulation. So food processors, this is an opportunity. In fact, I would like to add here that Laghu Udyog Bharati and IMS Foundation, very progressive institutions in India with large membership, are organizing a Global Food Pro 2027 in Bengaluru at the BIEC from 13 to 15 May next year. And a lot of foreign buyers are going to come, and there are 250 booths. So I hope from such events, this processed food exports, it also includes machinery, food machinery and equipment. I am confident that exports will grow.
Wonderful. Let's move to the next story, which is something I don't think anyone would have foreseen this, Jagat ji, which is European is turning away from Chinese solar panels, and it looks like the opportunity may fall to India's laps. Please educate us on this.
Yes, so Indian makers have seen the opening now. For example, Italy and France have already closed their auctioned capacity to China, right? So they are no more offering it, and a new European Union law has come which caps one country's 50% of the clean technology value as a total import, right? So I don't know what is the figure of import in Europe from China, but must be very high, right? Because China is a leader in that area. But with 50% capping, the balance will go to countries like India, right? And the pending European Union free trade agreement with India could give Indian exporters equal footing, right? So this is a good development, and I hope this goes on to many other products, and you know how it plays out with solar panel, we have to see, and eh, if it goes on to other products also, because this should be a trend setter. Yeah, there's no point to do that in one product. Then slowly I think more products will get added to this system.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the next story. The complete man's story. Raymond Raymond Lifestyle has been expecting its Europe's share of its business to go up to almost a quarter of its own earnings. That's huge. Jagatji, I mean, I feel textile is one of those areas where India has historically also been a leader. I think we are slowly discovering that our textiles probably will get back to that state. Your thoughts?
Correct, correct. So I again repeat, and in every our podcast I keep saying roti kapda makan padhai dawai, right? So food, textile, building material, education, healthcare are always a growing market. So Raymond Lifestyle is expecting, so right now their 17% of their exports is to Europe. They are expecting it to go up to 25%. And one of the also the reasons is US tariff push. The US tariffs have pushed apparel makers in India to diversify the market, because it has become so uncertain, US tariffs. And Indian textile exports to top 10 European markets rose 9% to 69,500 crores in 25-26. And US exports fell by 7%, right? So that, even I would say, that is not a big fall, 7%, but still. So we are able to cover up. This was always the approach which the industry was educated to take, that diversify your exports vis-a-vis US to other markets, and that is seen to be happening.
Absolutely. And you'll start hearing a lot more news like this coming, especially as we sign more and more FTAs, guys. So please watch out for
Correct.
that. Moving on. So, Jagatji, me and you are frustrated here, which is Indian apparel exports to US fell by 18%, and the tariff pain seems to be showing. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so these are two different data sets. So the first one, which I was telling 7% was 25-26, but this 18% is for quarter one, right? I mean, half one, so Jan to June of this year. So uh, because a large we were still impacted by the tariff part, and garment exporters should chase, like markets like UK. So our UK free trade agreement is now active, right? So, and European Union orders with 100% tariff bill, again 100% tariff bill is sitting with the US House, right? And I mean, I'm confident even if it passes, there will be like the 10% thing which has been shot down by the Supreme Court. This will also be shot down, but still it will create some uncertainty. And India has captured 10% of UK orders that earlier went to Bangladesh because of the FTA, CETA. So 10% of Bangladesh orders moving to India is again a reflection of the ROI of free trade agreement, and that it is working, right? So I mean, again I repeat, garment exporters in India should target UK, EU, and other markets, including
Where
Australia.
FTAs are getting signed. Guys,
Correct,
look,
correct.
as US starts clamping down, you have to understand why do you think so? I mean, Jagaji, you can add your thoughts on this, but
Yes.
I feel one of the reason China doesn't really care what US does with its own export and tariff is because they are like, boss, you're just 20%, 15% of my overall exports. I'll export everywhere else. तो तुम
Correct.
क्या
Exactly.
क्या क्या नेगोशिएट कर रहे हो मेरे साथ? जाओ लेके जाओ अपना धंधा.
True. It is true. So that's the leverage they have. We also have, because ours also overall, if you see, 20% export is to US, 20%,
Right,
but
right,
80% is elsewhere. That's what I always say. Can we
yeah,
increase the 80% by 25%? And if we
exactly,
can do that, that negates the loss with US.
absolutely. So let's move on to the next story. So this is something which I feel, I mean, I'm just waiting for this, Jagatji. Now, one example, Indian drone maker IG Defense is in talks with Gulf countries to export their KAL. It's a 50 kg payload class attack drone. I mean, my God, India weapons exporter. I feel we are gonna परशुराम भगवान के वजह से I hope this becomes real. But go ahead, Jagat ji. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know, the range of this is 1,000 kilometer, right?
Wow.
And this
Yeah.
is the KAL is completely designed and developed in India, 100%
Wow.
make in India, right?
Wow.
So and last year almost like 23,000 crore was India's defense export. This it is targeted to be 50,000 crore, right? So that's a huge, huge jump, and private sector is playing a big role. You know, uh, almost 50% of that is coming from private sector, which is encouraging. And
Right.
exports needs, but the exports in this type of products needs government approval, because you know there is a foreign policy involved there, which
Right.
countries, which should be a India friendly country, right? So a lot of factors. So it has to come with government approval, and Gulf demand for such systems is growing, because now what has happened with all this Iran attacking the Gulf countries left, right, and center every day, they have realized that US is not able to protect them, right? Even though they have all the bases there and they have all the arrangements and agreements. So they also need their own protection now, other than the US protection. So then countries like India, which have always been neutral and always have had a good relationship with Gulf countries, is in a very good position to, so this is a good development in terms of IG defense. And I hope many other defense sector companies, because one of the largest growth which has happened in Indian startup system is in the defense sector. So that itself is a very commendable achievement of the youth of India.
So I have another thing for uh, some of the expiring exporters and all of that. So I have two stories to share here before we go ahead. So first one is my younger brother is actually a lawyer who
Hmm.
happens to be on he works in a corporate law firm which is working with a lot of defense startups. And he legitimately told me the other day that, hey, Nikhil, I can't tell you, what clients I have, but I can tell you for so many of the defense items they are exporting, spec for spec, it is either competing or beating against the best US and European systems. And I
Correct.
was
True.
like, incredible.
Oh
And
yeah, absolutely.
the second part, which is absolutely something which every exporter should think about, I myself am looking at opportunities of this, Jagaji, is US achieved its superpower status during wartime in the 1930s and 40s, during the First and Second World War,
True.
where पूरा धंधा उनका डिफेंस पे ही बिल्ड हुआ. All your major consumer brands at that time, Ford, cheese, freaking cheese, all these
Yes.
guys became suppliers for war-torn countries and built huge wealth.
Correct.
And I think history should teach us this. I mean, Jagatji, before we move on to the next thing, your thoughts on these two stories?
You are absolutely right. So in fact, the skirmish which we had with Pakistan was actually an opportunity, and it has actually transformed India's way of looking at defense, because now air power and then the drone technology, and those things have come into prominence, and of course our navy army is so strong. So technology is very important, and what is happening is, all the talent of India, young talent, particularly the IT sector talent, now AI based talent, is now working in India, because in all these defense equipment now AI also plays a big role. So that integration of the Indian talent not moving abroad and staying back in India and doing startups, and adding their talent into these type of products is a game changer. Otherwise, this used to take long time, because when PSUs of government were the exclusive ones doing it. So now with the private sector push, and of course the government of India has created such a wonderful ecosystem for them to prosper and succeed. So uh, absolutely, this is an opportunity. And because there are also, like you said, cheese. So it is not just defense. From that opportunity, many more things will come in, right? Because the moment you start supplying defense equipment to Gulf, they will also ask us for food security, right? So food security will kick in, and it's a what a matter of pride for India that after feeding 1.4 billion people, we are the largest rice exporter of the world, right? It's the success of the Indian farmer.
And
So
Gulf love our biryani rice.
correct, correct.
So let's move on to the next story, Jagatji, which is congestion at the Kandla port has stretched the rice cargo clearance to almost 40 days. My God, Jagatji, you can see I am fighting with you on top of rice supplies in the cartoon. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on this?
Hmm. Yeah, true. So this is what in the last episode we were talking about, that the shipment time from China is 15 days, and from India is 50 days, 50. To that now you add 35 days of waiting. I mean that's just killer. So we have to get our act together. I told you the infrastructure bottlenecks are still a challenge in India, right? So the exporters in India now want priority berthing. So there is one Angola-based vessel. Because what happens is that the import permit, for example, that import permit of that rice order is expiring on August 31st. So if by August 31st the vessel doesn't reach Angola, then you are stuck. So we need to sort out our infrastructure glitches fast. It should not be taking so much of time, right? And of course it is also related to the movement of ships, because they are all stuck in Hormuz Strait and they are taking a longer route. So that is also one reason. So we need to come out with some solutions of you know trying to get this sorted once and for all, because this is going to be a permanent feature going down, and we should make
Yeah,
every effort. Even forget the Hormuz Strait closure, or all the disturbances. Even otherwise, our turnaround time should needs to be increased. I mean, improved in the
absolutely.
port.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's move on to the next story. Jagatji, there's another issue in shipments. Singapore and Colombo choke points as well is slowing down exports. I mean, what is your message for a lot of your students as well? Because I know they would be dependent on this.
Yeah, so this China US cargo front loading, because they are getting the priority, has grabbed the feeder vessels, and rates are climbing, right? So containers have to wait up to 20 days at transshipment hubs, because India does transshipment. China does direct shipment, no transshipment. So because of the volume and because of the control they have on the shipping, so uh, you know so it takes bookings a month, almost a month out. You are out of by 1 month in delivery. So plan early and lock rates. So that's very important. And I mean, you're right. So because of this uh, feeder vessels in Singapore and Colombo getting choked, and they are giving preference to the China US cargo, this situation has happened. So we have to look at a solution to that fast.
Absolutely. And who would have thought that of all things, the well-oiled machine, which was the shipping supply chain, would have got affected so much. And another story. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, three plus stories on just shipments, but that's the reality we are in.
Yes,
Freight
absolutely.
rates to US and Europe are gonna go up 3 or 4 times. Be prepared, right,
Yeah,
Jagatji?
yeah. Yeah, already in fact. So exporters are now paying almost like $9,000 per container against 3,000 which was before. So three times. And two of the five weekly US services are suspended. And so build freight. So now you should build freight into every court, and make sure that you, if you have a large shipments, then make sure you do FOB transactions, because then the risk of the transport is on the importer, and you don't expose yourself to that risk. So because it's not very easy for importers to change supply chains in a very short quick time. So if you stick to it, they will agree to it. So these are very uncertain
Absolutely.
times, but you don't have to be impacted by it. You remember I used to tell when 50% duty was charged. I mean, 50% duty of freight rate going up, it is both the same thing for an exporter, right? It makes your goods costly. But at the time also, I'd said, don't reduce your price, hold to your price. And we see that it
Absolutely.
was shut down, and the US government has been refunding everybody.
Jagatji, we may have to do a more, dedicated talk on just navigating freight
Yeah,
rates as an exporter.
absolutely.
So, guys, let us know in the comment section if you would want it. But I think we'll definitely try to do it. Let's move on to the next story. Banks are squeezing activated carbon payments. So, banks are restricting payments for activated carbon exports to Russia. Jagatji, what's going on here?
Yeah, so what is happening? There are two parts to this. So, first of all, there is no government notification which bars these exports. Okay. But what banks are doing is that banks in India are taking a little precautionary step. So, they are citing sanctions. Now, sanctions means they are fearing the sanctions to come to their bank. The bank could be sanctioned, and that is why they are trying to avoid this activated carbon exports to Russia and Sudan. And just to share with you the volume, so India shipped about 1.8 lakh tons worth of 4,688 crore of activated carbon last year. So my suggestion is, talk to your bank before accepting new Russian orders in terms of activated carbon. And it's interesting that there is a bank of Russia in India called Sabar Bank, SBER, right? They are in many cities in India. You must get in touch with them. If you open a bank account there, then you will be able to escape this sanctions part, and you will be able to do trade freely, because that bank is doing rupee ruble trade and quite smooth operations.
All right. The last prioritized story for today, guys. Very interesting. Customs is drafting a playbook for 100 key imports to standardize faceless assessments. Heavily required. Just a few months back, many importers on Twitter had said, it's become an absolute challenge to work with customs to import anything. Jagatji, your thoughts?
Yeah, so the faceless assessment was experimented and tested some time back, and I think this should become a norm now. The way income tax is today faceless, the way GST is faceless, and see how smooth the things are working. Right, every month our GST collection of Government of India is increasing, and which is a reflection on the confidence which business community has on the government and the ecosystem. Same way, customs should, try and have 100% faceless assessment. So here, what is happening is product and origin specific SOPs are being developed by the customs for the 100 key imports. So standard operating procedures, and queries per bill of entry, queries per bill of entry. Bill of entry is made when you import something, are being capped at three. So otherwise, what used to happen is, they will raise one query, you solve, they will raise another query, you solve, they will raise third query, you solve, and go on and on. So now maximum three queries can be raised, so that the turnaround time becomes fast for clearance, and officers will be accountable for delay. So this is a good development, because till now there was no accountability. For whatever reason, its delay is taking place. Now, understand one thing, and everybody should understand, when we are talking of import clearance, at the same time, we are talking of export growth also, because a lot of things which we import is used as a raw material for our exports. So the dyes and chemicals which we import intermediates from outside. For the pharmaceuticals also, we import intermediates, right? For the solar panels, we import wafers and other things. So if import clearance is delayed and becomes, full of hassles, then export is going to suffer. Very simple, right? So accountability for officers for delay is a good development, and faster, consistent clearance for the free trade agreement tariff claims, right? So I think this once this playbook is in place and the standardized faceless assessment with the SOPs comes in place, and there is a good education to the exporting community and importing community, then I think these are the steps which should lead to ease of doing business. These are truly ease of doing business steps which will increase the confidence of the entrepreneur in India to look at exports. And exports actually should be made a people's movement in India, right? So
Yes,
that is how a lot of countries who have succeeded big time in exports did it. It should be a national
absolutely.
movement.
Absolutely. So there you have it, guys. I hope you had a good time. A lot of interesting export news. We'll see if we can do a dedicated sort of video on handling freights and navigating all these increased variable costs. Jagatji, thank you so much for this. Guys, if you have any questions, let us know in the comment section below, or if you're watching us on X or LinkedIn, you can just reply, and I'm sure me or Jagatji will pick it up. See you all in our next episode. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Nikhil. Bye.